What's up with the US presidency? Let's talk about it. It is growing more powerful. To understand this, let's go over the births of the three branches. The legislative branch is as old as our country, all the way back to the Articles of Confederation. This is like the big guy, big government person, many people, big dad, I don't know. Well, this guy basically was ruling over the country. It was very old, that's how it started. This is the original government, and that's why a lot of constitutional powers seem to be under the legislative branches, because it was the most big guy historically. Second, the executive branch. The Constitution was ratified June 21st, 1788. This is also when the executive branch became a major player because, well, it literally brought the executive branch into existence with the ratification of the Constitution. As the Constitution details the executive branch when it existed, so did this branch. Lastly, the judiciary branch. Think of the Judiciary Act of 1789, establishing court structure and a bunch of stuff under the Supreme Court. It really established the Supreme Court as something that exists, and of course, the John Marshall Court was important in this too. You guys remember Marbury versus Madison? It established judicial review. Judicial is such a hard word to say, but yeah, that's what it established, which basically gave the court its immense power. I don't know who's listening to this, but I'm assuming you know about the three branches. Like, to jog your memory, executive, think of the president. Legislative, think of Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Judicial, think of the Supreme Court, you know, those 9 judges in the scary black robes, those guys. Now, I want to look at the legislative branch specifically because it is so important to understanding this. And yes, I know it's not the executive branch, but are we talking about the legislative branch? We don't want to talk about Congress. Everything's always Congress. No. Well, it is important. The legislative branch, as I have said, came first. Thanks, King George III, we don't want another you, so intentionally the legislative branch had many different people running it, no kings. The Articles of Confederation came prior to the U.S. Constitution, and it was very, very focused on the legislative branch. It established the legislative branch as like the main guy. And even with the U.S. Constitution and its ratification, Congress was still constitutionally written in words set up for strength. Don't believe me? Pull up a document of the Constitution. A lot of the powers and stuff goes to Congress. Congress is like constitutionally goated. Let's look at the strength of the legislative branch. Number 1, they can create and override stuff. They can concretely change and create laws, overriding vetoes with a 2/3 approval, and more. They also have, second, big powers, like they control the budget, power of the purse. They have the final say on war. They serve as the voice of the people, because the people who are in Congress, those senators, those House of Rep people, they're coming from different areas of the country and are more close to the people. Also, number 3, checks and okays. Congress has the power to provide advice. Well, anyone can do that, but when Congress says it, it's a big deal. And consent to appointments within other branches, and they have impeachment and selection powers. So if someone dookies like coming in to say the executive branch, they don't want to approve him, they can say no, and his butt is out. Okay, we get it. Congress, power. We're supposed to be talking about how presidents are getting more powerful. But I bring up Congress and the legislative branch because in knowing that it was so powerful in the past, we can see how it has ceded and lost power over time to the executive branch headed by the president. Let's go. Article 2 of the United States Constitution establishes the powers of the executive branch and the president, and the president's responsibilities and stuff. It also details requirements for President of the United States and electing the president, like, oh, you gotta be over 35, you gotta be like, blah, 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 blah. So, like, I can't run for president. I am a naturalized citizen, so I can't run for president anyway, but even if I was born here, I could not run for president, which is a shame. Let's talk about some amendments. These amendments over time document change in regards to the executive branch, and obviously something changed for the presidency to have so much power. Let's go digging for it. 12th Amendment, president and vice president on one ballot. If there happens to be a tie, like, come on, that's just not gonna happen, well, then the House of Representatives gets to pick the president and the Senate picks the VP. See, more Congress power. Anyway, 20th Amendment. This basically moved the inauguration from March 4th to January 20th. We don't want an insanely long lame duck period where like the president knows like they can't really do anything because a new president is coming in and their term's ending. Like they can, I don't know, it's just not a good idea to have a long lame duck period. 22nd Amendment basically states that a president is limited to 2 terms and 2 years of someone else's term if they happen to take over for a president who is no longer in office, if they were the VP. So that is the maximum. 23rd Amendment, electoral college representation for DC, basically saying that people who live in DC can vote. Why they shouldn't be able to vote, I do not know. Maybe that's why this amendment exists. And 25th Amendment, basically presidential succession technicals, like, oh, if the president dies and the vice president takes over, if X dies and Y dies and C, or something happens, or they're impeached, or they're incapacitated for a certain amount of time. All the stuff about that is the 25th Amendment. Okay, so how do these amendments show that the president's power have increased? Heck, the 22nd Amendment literally limits a president. Like, there's gonna be no more FDRs, there's not gonna be like any more 4-term presidents. If anything, this is limiting. So I give you understanding presidential power. Dun dun dun. Express power. Express powers are explicit powers in the Constitution. Article 2 is where we can find stuff on POTUS. Implied powers. These powers are not explicitly stated in the Constitution, but they are necessary to carry out constitutional functions. And let's not forget, clout. The president has so much clout focused on one person. And I know this might not be an AP Gov level answer, but the bully pulpit is a real thing, and it has been used to increase the power of the presidency. More on presidential power, well, the president has a quick reaction time. POTUS is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Quick decisions are vital, but can potentially consolidate power. And have executive privilege. POTUS can withhold info from the other branches, keeping it confidential within the executive branch. Obama administration. Packing the courts. While congressional approval is needed, new justices are appointed by President of the United States, and what better way to leave your legacy set in stone than filling up the courts with judges who are sympathetic to your cause? And of course, the notorious executive order. An executive order is a directive from the President of the United States. It has the force of the law, but does not go through the full legislative process. It's basically like stamping a sticker on something and be like, okay, listen to this. Like, you know, in front of all the other stickers that had to be like processed and look up. That's a really bad analogy, but you guys get the point. Want some concrete examples? Let's look at President Lincoln. He suspended habeas corpus and took unilateral military action. Was this a power push? Yes! People are still debating on whether it's constitutional today. Look on the r/president subreddit. Everyone is talking about it. President Kennedy. He navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis, bypassing traditional diplomatic channels to implement a naval blockade. Power push? Yes, absolutely, this is a power push. President Obama. He used executive orders to implement immigration and environmental policies, often in the face of congressional gridlock. Is this a power push? Yes, it is. And President Donald Trump. He issued a series of executive orders to bypass legislative processes, deploy federal forces, immigration policies, etc. He's literally doing it to waddle past the legislative branch, and presidents have done this in the past. This is absolutely a power push. So yeah, presidents are definitely getting more powerful. In the past, the legislative branch would have been like, oh hell no, F you. But they're getting away with more stuff as the years progress, and we can see this in history. Sometimes I wonder what the future is going to look like. More on that later. Speaking of the future, let's look at the future of the office. The United States of America functions under a presidential system. A presidential system is a democratic system in which a head of government, the president, leads an executive branch that is independent of the legislative branch. Basically, it relies on the fact that the legislative branch and the presidential or executive branch are separate from one another, which we have. This system outlines for separation of powers in their literal separation, especially between the executive and legislative. Surprise, surprise. This serves as the basis for checks and balances. It also features a president as the head of state and head of government. Also features fixed terms for the executive, like no kings. They can't be sitting there for years and years. At least not anymore. FDR. Some pros of the presidential systems. They're fast and flexible. The president can make decisions like this. Citizens as electors, people's voice matters. Also, the checks and balances are basically like a given, like they're gonna be there, and that's always good. We don't want tyrants. But there's also some cons, like it's hard to remove the president of the United States. Like we have impeachment, but no one has gotten impeached. Like Nixon's Watergate ass almost got impeached, but that didn't end up happening. Also, potential gridlock is a thing. The branches can't compromise. They're like stuck, and like the checks and balances make it so one can't really override the other in certain things, so it can get sticky. Also, potential authoritarianism. I said that wrong. Authoritarianism. Okay, whatever. Well, potential that. The president can very easily get a bit too cocky and end up having a bit more control, especially by exploiting the bully pulpit implied powers, and the other branches is kind of not doing anything or like listening to the president or being part of the agenda or whatever. Lastly, I want you guys to consider majority rule. Majority rule is characteristic of presidential systems, and while it may be seen as a good thing, like the group with the most amount of individuals of it wins, so they are happy, the biggest group is happy. Well, that could potentially overlook and disregard minorities who are obviously important, like we exist too kind of deal. And also the minorities, when put together, may comprise more people than the big group by itself, leading to like most people not happy, just the biggest group is happy. It gets messy. So there's cons to majority rule and pros. It's just characteristic of presidential systems. Essentially, things get haywire with a presidential system. Either the president goes authoritarian, president goes that, or the other branches assert themselves. Clearly, presidential powers coupled with the structure of the presidential system itself allow the office of the president to consolidate hella power. Hopefully you all are up to speed right now and I can actually get into right now. How is this happening in current US politics, and how might it be a very big issue? Quick disclaimer though, before I get any further with this, have any of you guys watched My Little Pony Friendship is Magic? Well, if you have, great, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, let me get you up to speed. There's this alicorn super powerful princess now named Princess Twilight Sparkle. She took over the throne after her predecessor, Princess Celestia. She's basically a dictator. What she says goes. Hey, she's the princess of friendship. She's super kind. Even if she's a dictator, she's fair and everyone loves her. So no one really notices that she's a dictator, but she is a dictator nonetheless. I'm not here to say that any presidents are bad or good. I'm merely saying that the consolidation of power can lead to dictatorship, and dictatorship is not good, because the second that nice person is out of office and some douchebag takes over, well, they can use the dictatoriness of the dictatorship to kind of mess things up. That is the problem with power consolidation. We're not here to take sides, we're just here to spit the facts. Dictator is a hard word to say too. Okay, so remember when I said that executive orders are a surefire way to push the power of the president and in pushing expand it? Well, they're coming back. Looking at current politics, President Donald Trump holds the current record for the most executive orders in his first 100 days. He had 143 executive orders in these days, and on the first day he sat down and got out 26. Recall that I said executive orders have the full force of the law, just not the entire backing of it because it didn't go through Congress. It's not technically a law, but it's basically a law. You know what I'm saying. See, anyone who's like, the president doesn't have the authority to make laws. Well, they're technically right, but they aren't practically right. And we've seen this in history, both past and modern. Well, I guess modern is not really history, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. Remember I mentioned other races ceding power to the president is a big way for the president to get more power and consolidate the power of the office even when they're out of it. Well, that's the case that's happening right now. Congress and the Supreme Court have ceded power to President Trump. Like Congress, for example, they basically gave President Trump unilateral control over the tariffs. Like they're not stepping in, they're letting him do that. The Supreme Court is in on the action too. It ceded power to President Trump primarily by limiting lower courts' ability to give out nationwide injunctions against executive actions and against the president. It also gave a very broad interpretation of presidential immunity, and this resulted in Trump being able to have greater control over independent agencies and official acts. Critics say that this, weakens the checks and balances, because come on, it does, but the main support for this argument is, constitutional balance and restoring it. As I mentioned, the bully pulpit has huge influence in determining a president's power and effectiveness in policy throughout their term. Look at the stats if you don't believe me. When you have the support of the nation, really, what can't you do? In my research, I have not seen one site that doesn't state Trump's approval rating is falling, even amongst Republicans. That being said, even though he is losing clout, he doesn't seem to be losing power. He still seems to make unilateral decisions that are being fought in courts to this date. An example of this is Executive Order 14160, titled Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. Basically, this executive order states that certain people will be denied their birthright citizenship based on who their parents are. Really, you have to have one parent who is an American citizen to have your birthright citizenship recognized as a citizenship. Or, like an approved permanent resident. You can look into the nitty-gritties. I'm here to focus on the big fish. No matter your opinion on this executive order, it is a fact that this is being fought in the courts, and it's kind of a big push for a president to do this. It's really attempting to unilaterally change a long-standing constitutional guarantee of citizenship from being born on this wonderful piece of land. Unilaterally is also a hard word to say. 14160 is a great example of pushing the limits of executive authority, whether its main aim is to consolidate that power for the president or not. Well, obviously it's not the main aim, but it could be something, part of it. I don't know. I don't try to know. Another disclaimer, the reason we are talking about President Donald J. Trump is because that's who's in office right now, and as I said, we're talking about right now. So many presidents have done similar things in the past, as I've discussed, and have consolidated their power. They should really make me president. I'd be great at power consolidation. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yes, presidential power consolidation. I literally just said I would be great at it. Hopefully by now y'all have a rough idea, well, I would hope a good idea, not just a rough idea, on how this can happen and how it is happening in current politics. Time to go to my favorite councilman. Okay, so today I have brought on the amazing Mr. Hudson. Say hi, Mr. Hudson.
I don't know if I'm amazing, but I'm happy to be here. It's great to be here today.
So I have a few questions I'd like to ask you. First off, do you think that the power consolidation regarding the executive branch is a problem? Why or why not?
So if you look at it from the time period from our founding, when the Constitution was passed in 1787, 88, and 89, the president was never meant to be a super powerful person.
Yes.
That's what everybody was really scared of, right? But certainly when history books are written about these first 25 years of the 21st century, and some of them are already written this way, the title is going to be the Imperial Presidency, because there's so much partisanship in Congress. So I'm just telling you the reasons behind it. It's hard to get big laws passed because we have such big disagreements. So it's hard to get big laws passed. And then the president feels compelled to do something. Bill Clinton and the Republicans in Congress in the 90s worked together pretty well. But then once George W. Bush was elected, I think the partisanship went quite a bit up. After 9/11, there was crazy amounts of we're in this together.
Yeah.
But the Iraqi war, the war in Afghanistan started to really pull Washington apart. And so George W. Bush, different George W., started using his executive orders a little bit more. And he was just a really, really strong president. President Obama came in, and the same thing kind of happened. There was some work together, but then really President Obama famously said, I've got a phone and I've got a pen.
Yes.
Meaning that I can just make executive orders. And then President Trump came. He had a similar attitude. President Biden did a ton of executive orders. And then now President Trump, once again, is just doing this.
Yes.
So the last four presidents, Obama, Bush, Trump, and Biden, they've all really engaged in this. We can have arguments on who's doing it more, and I'm sure people will. On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of presidential power, they're all above 7 and 8.
Yes.
In terms of presidential power. So that's why it's happened. I think most people are probably not a fan of it because when you're the half that likes the president, the half that, oh yeah, he's doing this, but then the shoe is on the other foot, and you're like,
I
oh,
agree.
the president has too much power. So there's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a lot of inconsistency. Same thing with states' rights. Be like, when California is like under Trump, it's like, I think the state should be able to do whatever. We're not listening to Trump. But when Biden's president, Texas is like, we're going to do whatever we want. It's like, okay, everyone's being hypocritical. And that's unfortunate because I think the long-term stability of our constitutional democratic republic depends on people having faith that their leaders are being consistent, that their leaders are being honorable, and not engaging in a world of hypocrisy that, yeah, helps your team right now, but might really hurt your team later. So I think short-term thinking is a problem. So to answer your original question, is the increasing executive power a problem? I think it is concerning because if you keep pushing the envelope, eventually it's going to go too far. Now, what does that look like, and when is that? I don't know, but it could be a concern.
Yes, especially since we fought a whole war to get rid of King George.
Yeah, King George, the worst.
Yes. So you mentioned a lot about the executive orders, and many people cite that as being one of the main ways that presidents push their power and expand it. Do you feel that it's like one of the biggest reasons or not?
It's one of the biggest reasons and ways that power is expanding. Is that what you're asking? Or
Yes.
one of the reasons that people are really angry?
One of the reasons how they're expanding their power.
Yeah, I mean, it's the easiest thing to do.
It is.
President Obama, I've got a phone, I've got a pen.
It is
Like,
pretty easy to do.
there's a wonderful SNL clip from the Obama administration. And, you know how a bill becomes a law? Do you remember the song?
Oh my gosh, I love that song.
Then do you remember the parody SNL did?
Yep, I remember.
Did Mr. Kelly show you?
Yeah,
Or
Mr.
did-
Kelly showed us.
And so the whole song is long for bill and a law. And then, I'm an executive
Yup.
order, and I pretty much just happen.
Yes, pretty much just happens.
That's it? Yep, that's it.
Yes,
So it's the easiest thing to do.
it is.
Of course, the problem, as I mentioned earlier, then it can just be overturned by the next person. And now we have this giant pendulum.
So other than is there a way, because I'm not very well, sorry, I can't talk. I'm not very well educated on this. Is there a way that executive orders can be like said no to? Because I know one right now. I think it's 14160 about the birthright citizenship status is being debated right now. So
It is. So I think there's a couple of limits to executive orders. One, they have to be constitutional,
Yes.
obviously. But number two, they have to, oh, you know, I already said it. Number two, you have to realize that they can just be overturned by the next person.
yeah, they can be.
But number three, they really still have to be under the purview of what a president can do and not in violation with laws that Congress and the president have signed. So there are some limitations. There are some walls to executive orders. I think those walls are being pushed at constantly.
Yes.
And they've been pushed at quite a bit over the last 25 years.
So presidential power expansion concerning to a lot of people, concerning to you and I. Do you know, like, or are thinking of any policies or certain changes that could reverse and mitigate this and prevent it from going too far? Do you see these happening in the future?
I think Congress needs to step up, but
Congress.
people have been saying that about Congress for a really long time. Congress needs to step up and do something, but it's really, really difficult because let's say you are a bipartisan person. Let's say you're a moderate Democrat or a moderate Republican. It's
Yeah.
like, let's work together. Like, I was sent to Washington not to be a partisan hack. I was sent to Washington to get stuff done, to pass bills.
Yes.
And I want to work together with people. But for a moderate Republican, he's going to be attacked by the extreme Republican side.
You're not doing what we're
And then if you're a moderate Democrat, you'll be attacked by the extreme Democratic
Yeah.
side. And this is becoming very, very common. And so the moderate folks are being weeded out. And right now you have, let's say you have 200 super Republicans and 200 super Democrats. And then you have 35 middle-of-the-road Republicans and
Yeah.
Democrats. But then we're being weeded out. Soon it's going to be 210 and 210. And eventually it's going to be 215 and 215.
Yeah.
And just every single year we're just going to be inundated with people. And I use the word extreme, you know, not necessarily has a negative because people have passion. And every political party has their base.
Yes.
Those bases are incredibly passionate, but certainly the unwillingness to compromise is probably a cause for concern as well, because I know that there are things we can compromise about.
There are. Definitely, I agree.
But unfortunately, the issues, the if you get a bunch of people in a room, and if you don't talk about issues related to sex and guns, all of a sudden the amount of arguments happen goes way down.
Yes.
Because those issues related to sex and guns suck up all the oxygen in the room.
They do.
But I don't see those issues going away.
Unfortunately.
So, and there's very real issues in there. I'm not lessening those issues. They are just sucking up all the oxygen.
Yes, and people aren't willing to compromise.
Well, and there's all these other issues that are
Yeah.
compromisable, but they're being overshadowed right now. So,
Yes.
I think that's the issue. So when Congress isn't doing anything, that's when the president's like, fine, I'll just do something. I got my phone, I got my pen. But I keep using that quote. It makes it seem like I'm
It's
picking
so
on
real,
President
though.
Obama specifically. All of them are using pen and the phone to make their executive orders.
They are. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hudson. I learned a lot that I did not know before. Genuinely.
Delightful.
Yes.
Delightful to be here, Nikita.
Awesome.
I usually use my quiet NPR voice.
Quiet NPR voice.
And now we're going to turn over to the soft jazz music of Miles Davis and John Coltrane.
Yes.
Please stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Let me find some jazz music. That's all for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed my podcast about presidential power consolidation and how this may be a problem. Some of the policy changes that Mr. Hudson suggested were very, very true. Congress really does need to step up. A lot of the president's power was received from ceding power to it from the other branches and stuff like that. And also maybe there needs to be another check on those executive orders because, pen and paper, it's right there. A lot of people are using it. But we can get into all that another time. Thank you so much and have a nice time.